Hello, hello, and welcome to the second Wheelhouse Talk of the year. This is exciting to see so many new faces in here, and returning fellows, welcome back to you as well. I'm Austin Dean. I'm the president of the Cook Leadership Academy, and we're always excited to bring in wonderful speakers to the community so that you guys can benefit and learn along with the fellows good leadership tools, tactics, and some success stories. So welcome. We also have here in the audience Ralph Hauenstein, currently guest. Thank you for being here. Without Ralph, the Cook Leadership Academy, the Hauenstein Center for Presidential Studies would not exist, wouldn't be here. Without his leadership, we would not be able to kind of go forth in our communities and make a difference. So thank you, Ralph. Before we bring our speaker in, I'd like to kind of recover with you what exactly the Wheelhouse is. And you can see the Wheelhouse up here. It was donated by President Tom Haas from Grand Valley State University. And it's very symbolic. And the first thing the Wheelhouse represents, and you can picture yourself here standing on the boat, is that blue sky. The blue sky, wide open, innovative thinking. It's blue ocean strategies. Also there at the helm of the ship, it's where we are our most powerful. It's where as leaders we command the ship, where we give direction, where we can practice our leadership styles. And then the third thing that the Wheelhouse allows us to do, it has spokes on the wheel that converge on a very centralized point. And in that point, that's where community converges. That's where we come together, we can solve issues, we can develop things that we can solve here local in our community. And so it's where together we are most strong. They're at the core of the Wheelhouse. And so if you can think of those things as we bring our speakers in here, and you can kind of relate those ideas to what we're trying to do here at the Cook Leadership Academy and through the Hauenstein Center, that's kind of our mission and our goal. So with that, I'd like to bring in the Vice President of the Cook Leadership Academy, Michelle Clancy, to introduce our speaker.
Once again, thank you all for coming out on this brisk fall day. I have the pleasure of introducing Yang Kim, a standout leader in the field of design and branding. She is the Executive Creative Director of Peopledesign, where she is the visionary visual communicator behind brands such as Amway, Steelcase, UICA, and ArtPrize. Yang is also the author of Brand Identity Essentials, a must-read book in the world of brand development and design. In her spare time, she serves as lecturer and judge to the world's most prestigious graphic arts organizations and schools. When I first met Yang over the summer, she made a very profound statement, one in which I personally feel captures the humble essence of who Yang is. The statement was regards to the name Peopledesign, but it also transcends into her overall outlook on life. It goes a little something like this. It's all about people, the collective people, or the collective group that creates what we have. We have people working, the work we do is for people, the people we work with are people. It's all about how we communicate with people and how we design experiences for people. With that, please join me in welcoming Yang Kim.
Hi.
Hello.
So I'm not really a public speaker by my background, so bear with me. Well, thank you to the Hauenstein Center for inviting me here and putting on these talks. Okay, I'm just going to start with a few things first. So I want to start by managing expectations and stating all of my caveats and apologies now, ahead of time. So one, as I mentioned, I'm not a public speaker, and I will read this from time to time, and so I might fumble, so just, give me a break. Two, I will make sweeping generalizations, but by doing so, I think the stories are more interesting and more real. And then three, I'm going to apologize to those mentioned in my talk in advance, because if I edit too much out, then also it won't be interesting stories. All right. So there you go. All right, so now to further manage your expectations, I really never thought of myself as a leader, and so it's interesting that I was invited here today. But I sort of got used to the idea and warmed up to it, and I realized that as I get older, that I'm becoming more self-aware of myself, and while it's a cliche, but kids really do put a clear light on things. When you have kids, you become hyper-aware that, like it or not, you are a role model. They see everything and they instinctively model your behavior. Sorry. This way. So whether I like it or not, I've become a role model, for good or for bad. So now I put more thought into what I do and what I say. Gina and Kelly might disagree with that, by the way. We're in the audience. So Kurt, who's a writer in my office and helped also edit our book, helped me edit this speech today. And he recalled a funny anecdote about the point about being a role model. And so during Jon Stewart's debate with Bill O'Reilly, he called O'Reilly the mayor of Bullshit Mountain, which is a phrase his 7-year-old now repeats constantly. So that goes over really well at recess. Kathy and Sue, you know that. So I suppose that's why I'm here today, to talk about being a role model. I originally wanted to call this talk From Blue Collar to Corner Office, but we don't really have offices in our studio. I just sit alongside the rest of our team in an open office. But the blue collar part, I think, is very important. Coming from a blue-collar family, all I knew was to work from age 10 and on. It's pretty simple. You work or you don't eat. Our family business was upholstery, and we started our business from the crawl space of our 2-bedroom ranch house in Annandale, Virginia. Yes, crawl space. So being short can actually be an advantage. Thank you. So we would do all of our work after dinner because my parents kept their day jobs, just in case. Because of language barriers for my parents, my brother and I learned English and they did not really take classes. So my brother and I did a lot of things that kids usually don't do. We looked at mortgage documents, worked with bankers, real estate agents, insurance guys, accountants. I knew at an early age that it takes a lot of work to be successful. It really just takes a lot of work to be alive. I carried this knowledge into school, work, and into business today. So that's how I got started in business. Years ago, we did a talk in Chicago that we actually got paid for. And we titled it, Business Isn't a 4-Letter Word. The seats were filled with designers, and many designers, like artists, don't like to think about business. The good ones make it in spite of themselves, and the bad ones don't. The title was appropriate for that group of people because the idea of running a business scares the bejesus out of them. But I'm proof that you can do it. My serious work career started at Herman Miller, which was a great place for me to learn. I went to work for Steve Frickholm, who was one of the most famous designers in the US, and he happens to be here. I wanted to learn everything I could about design, which I did. Thanks, Steve. But what was equally important was that I learned about business. Working in a corporation opened my eyes to business processes. Basic stuff like expense reports, invoices, etc. were all new to me. But it's stuff you don't learn in design school. These experiences helped me lay the foundation for our business. We were young and had nothing to lose. So I thought the best way that I could contribute today was to tell you some personal stories from which I've learned valuable lessons. All right. Number 1, don't spend your money on an office space. Don't write this down. We're just talking. Okay. Our former babysitter, who now has completed her advanced degree in physiology, hopes to one day become a health coach. There are a lot of things that we talked about, but one of the first things that she wanted to do was to get an office. Actually, that was number 2. First was to try to write a business plan. Number 2 was get an office, which that's pretty high on the list. I told her that was a bad idea. You don't really need an office to start a business. For one reason, it costs a lot of money. Meetings can be conducted at coffee shops or at clients' homes. In her case, she can partner with related practices like personal trainers or yoga studios and use their spaces. Doing things on the cheap doesn't mean that you can't do them right. It just means you're choosing to spend your money wisely. Lesson 2. Invest in good shoes. Where is Michelle? Okay. This one's for you. I've interviewed many people in my career, probably more than 100. When I meet people, I always look at shoes. Shoes tell me a lot about a person. It's not just about their personal style. It's more than that. Great shoes exude confidence. The way you walk in a great pair of shoes is important. You stand up straight. You feel good in those shoes. You deserve those shoes. And that confidence shows. Sadly, we had a person leave the office for another job, and the very next day, they had on a new pair of contemporary leather shoes. Grown-up shoes. This is a guy who usually wore Keens to the office. He obviously felt good about his decision, and it showed. Number 3, don't hire another you. Running a successful business keeps you busy. And when you get busy, the temptation is to hire someone to handle the overflow. But if you do that, eventually you'll have 5 people who do the same thing that you do. Then you're either just a band of freelancers who just work under the same roof, or you're too busy managing or brokering the work. Either of those is fine, but if you find yourself in one of those situations, you might be robbing yourself of contributing to something greater. We made a conscious decision to hire people who have different skills and come from different disciplines. The combination of all that makes any project better and more meaningful. Kevin and I are both designers, but we complement each other because he's good at big picture thinking and I'm a better implementer. He starts and I finish. We have found that the person who can see the forest can't also be the person tending to the trees. The combination in skills gives you more power. Number 4, be lazy. I like to call myself a lazy designer. Lazy designer. When what I mean by this is I don't reinvent the wheel if I don't have to. That's just a waste of time. Being lazy makes you more efficient and you can get more done. Wasn't it Picasso who said something, or he was attributed by the phrase, good artists borrow, great artists steal? I remember an intern way back at Herman Miller actually, who wanted to do something really different with a brochure. Groundbreaking. It was 32 pages long, so it was long enough to need page numbers. She wanted to be so different that she put even numbers on the right-hand pages. Even numbers on the right-hand pages. So page 1 is on the left page. In the Western world, it's a very widely accepted convention to have odd numbers on the right-hand pages. She was going to change hundreds of years of learned behavior with one little 32-page brochure. Good luck. The lesson, of course, is that while changing the world is admirable, do it in a place where you can be effective. 5, use common sense. It seems to me that basic common sense is either not being learned anymore or not being taught. Maybe it's over-parenting. I don't know. I hate to sound old-fashioned, but people just don't seem to have much common sense anymore. I'm going to pick one on one of our own at the office. When you're the new guy, you can't act like you own the place. Common sense, right? I see some shaking hands. 2 weeks on the job, and our new employee was talking to a client who was in town for a photo shoot in a way that was very uncomfortably social, too social. Later, my client says, "See you at dinner tonight." And I thought, I didn't know anything about dinner. So I go back to the office and ask our new employee, "Did you coordinate a dinner with a client?" They said, "Oh, we were just talking about it, no big deal." I said, "You'd better figure that out because it sounded like they're expecting you to take them out." That was missed opportunity number 1 to invite me to my client appreciation dinner. Later I said, "If you do take them out, then use my card." That was missed opportunity number 2 to invite me to my client appreciation dinner, the one that I'm paying for. Lesson, don't assume that you have the keys to the kingdom until you've earned them. Watch and learn, wait until it's your time, and try this. A simple, "Is there anything else I can help you with before I leave?" will go a long way. Number 6. I swear, there's not 100 of these, okay? Just a couple more. Have good manners. It's surprising to me when you work with people who don't have good manners. We've had clients who yell at us just to keep us in what they see as our place. We gladly fire them when we get the chance to. Life's too short to work with people who don't have good manners. Recently, I had a project go awry. Really tiny little project for an IP law firm in town. Nobody's here from them. I'm sorry, McGarry Bear. They're good friends of ours, so I don't think they'll have a problem with this. But it really was a tiny little project. It wasn't insignificant, it was just tiny. It was one of those small things that got really huge and literally ugly. We had hired a photographer to photograph 2 new guys at the firm. Long story short, the photographs were not acceptable after many rounds of revisions. The photographer just couldn't fix his own photos. So rather than go back to the photographer for the 4th time, I decided to use a photo retoucher. Doing the same thing and expecting different results is the definition of insanity, right? The retoucher fixed the problem and it cost less than $100. Pretty cheap for retouching. I informed the photographer that the problem was fixed and that we paid the retoucher out of pocket. There was no word. The right thing to do would have been for the photographer to offer the full amount. Bad manners, bad business. Don't brag. I think you can talk about your skills and accomplishments, and of course people expect that you need to validate your skills and accomplishments to others, but constantly reminding people of your pedigree is annoying. The tone you use when doing this is very important and always needs to fall just short of bragging. So, as an aside, so when you see the reel at the end of this presentation showing you all of our work, just know that it's not bragging. We had one client who was really, really difficult. There were lots of issues, but one pivotal moment sticks out for me. She mentioned, kind of unrelated to the conversation, other than to hold one over me, that she had gone to Harvard. I'm all for Harvard. I love Harvard. I took classes at Harvard Business School. That's another story. It actually sounds more impressive than it is. But at some point, it doesn't matter. If you're brilliant, you're brilliant. It doesn't matter what school you went to. My friend Ted retold a story that he had heard from his mentor, which applies here. Honey, the world is run by C students, so get used to it. Okay, listen, Nate. Some things can and should be delegated. So this is my favorite story about knowing when to delegate. So this is the one to really listen to. Okay? This was the moment that I had an epiphany that my time is better spent elsewhere. We had a woman in the office who had worked with us for about 2 years. She was very smart, very interesting person. She thought very deeply about many things. She had a lot of depth. Well, one day, a bar of soap on a soap dish showed up in the women's bathroom. I emailed right away and asked the ladies. I wanted to know what was up with the soap. A few minutes later, I went back to the bathroom and the soap was gone. The person did finally fess up. I politely told her that I don't think communal bar soap is appropriate for an office of our size. And that if she wanted to keep it in the cabinet in the bathroom for her own use, she could of course do so. She declined. When I asked her what was wrong with the liquid soap in the dispenser, she said that it stings her hands. So that was a revelation. I thought, she's been working with us for 2 years and brings this up now, that it's been stinging her hands. I mean, I felt badly that it was stinging her hands, but at the same time, this was an interesting revelation. So I thought, are we really talking about soap here? It's like, this was actually a high point for me. That's when I knew that I should not be dealing with this kind of thing. So in closing, worry about the big things, delegate as much as you can, focus on what matters. Thank you, and I'm going to close with our reel from the office, which is not bragging, okay? Oh, that's a good question. People always say that's a good question when they don't know the answer. Gives me a minute to think about. Well, getting into design, I mean, I was always sort of visually inclined and did a lot of art classes in school, and so that got me into the visual world. And then from there, and being at Carnegie Mellon, who's very, the design program was really stellar at Carnegie Mellon. It was all about appropriate design, not necessarily the styling part of design. I feel like there's sort of two parts to design. There's what makes sense, and then there's the styling. They both have to work together. And so that interest in appropriateness got me into design. Oh my God, we fail all the time, guys, right? Every day. Design is interesting because you have to have kind of a thick skin for the work, because 80% of your work is rejected. So you're dealing with rejection every day on an ongoing basis. You put out a lot of ideas, you collaborate with people. Most of the ideas don't get used. Now, a lot of the ideas are bad, granted, but only a few rise to the top, and those are worth pursuing. And so there's a lot of failure in the design process, and there of course have been failures in the business part of how we run our business too, and we learn from those as well. But you got to just keep moving. You learn things from failure. You make something, and it for some reason it might be totally wrong, but you learn from that it's totally wrong, and then you move on and you create the totally right thing. Well, Kevin and I are both designers, and we came from the sort of true design background, and we certainly were doing all the projects that designers do. And at some point, I remember a meeting specifically where somebody came to us and they wanted a catalog. So they wanted to sell these chairs, I think it was chairs to essentially like the DWR kind of audience. Higher income, modern contemporary furniture. So it was, we're going to do these elaborate photo shoots, make a little catalog. And then I just, I was sitting there listening to him, and I thought, I will gladly spend your money to do these photo shoots. I love spending money, so I'll spend your money. But they didn't really have a plan for who it was going to be sent to, demographic information. So they were just going to send it out and see what happens. And I just think that's not smart. So what we did was we added this layer of business strategy work ahead of the design work, so that it informs what we produce at the end, so that it becomes a smarter, more successful solution. That is another good question. Well, two of the guys are here. Maybe they can answer the question. Well, we try to have fun in the office. So we try to keep a light atmosphere, try to do interesting things. We rather than take a project at face value. Okay, let me back up. If we wanted to make a whole lot of money, we could. But designers tend to, but you run your business differently. It's a different business model. So, most designers are not really concerned too much about money. They're just concerned about doing, contributing to the world and doing good work. And so we take a project, we don't really look at it at face value. We try a lot of different things. We try to think outside of the box and try to come up with interesting solutions. So that might mean not slaving away in your cubicle, right? Because you're not interacting with anything, you're not doing anything interesting other than looking at your computer, which there's some value in, these days looking at your computer, but so we try to get out and do things. We don't tie people to their cubicles. They don't have to sit there chained to the desk.